Yesenia Fernandez, who is a PhD candidate in Media, Culture, and Communication at New York University. She also holds an MA in Latin American Studies from NYU, as well as a BA in Psychology from the University of Havana. Yesenia has received fellowships from the Latin American Council of Social Sciences, CLACSO, the CUNY Caribbean Exchange Program, the Cuban Heritage Collection right next door at the University of Miami, and as I mentioned before, she's a recipient of the 2017 Diaz Ayala Library Travel Grant. In addition to being a researcher and a scholar, she's also an accomplished actress, dancer, and instructor of Cuban dance. Maybe she'll show us a little bit about that today as well. And she has worked with numerous musical and oral traditions such as rumba and hip-hop. Her work on Afro-Cuban culture, including dance, music, race, and identity, has been published in Cuba, the United States, and Brazil. So we're very happy to have her, and please help me welcome Yesenia.
Very glad to be with all you today. Thank you, Dr. Duani, for the presentation. Thank you, Veronica, for all your help all those days here working at the collection. So the title of my presentation is La Mulata in the Spanish Caribbean from stage to films. And this is part of the work. I plan to be probably like a second chapter of my dissertation. But of course, and part of it is already written, but I am going to include sort of a conversation, a sort of a dialogue with the material also I have found in the archive in these 3 days of intense work. So, in the last decades, several scholars, have analyzed the semiotics of La Mulata, ubiquitous presence in Cuban popular culture. Those visual and literary analyses have been centered in the national production, leaving aside the transnational renditions. In this paper, I map partially itinerary of La Mulata avatar in the Latin American films and contemporary cultural practices, by paying close attention to the intersection of the race of the performers and the aesthetic discourses they enact. I theorize the functions of these translations and analyze the relevance of the repertoire of La Mulata in today's Latino visual and popular culture. La Mulata is the better Galician invention. This is a popular expression, a sort of blessing that can still be heard in the streets of Havana as one passes by storefronts advertising Mulata brand rum and houses with images of La Caridad del Cobre, the Cuban statues of the Virgin Maria represented as a Mulata woman, also the island national patron saint. So we have also Cecilia Valdez. The image of La Mulata permits the imaginary of the nation from the depiction of Cecilia Valdez, our first tragic literary mulata, to the Cuban operetas or zarzuelas, from the poetry of the 1800s until today, as a founding myth of Cubanness. Vera Kursinski analyzed how the figure of La Mulata represents the national inquiry into how gender, race, and hybridism reflect the power relations of colonial Cuba. Those analyses of La Mulata cite her iconicity as critical to the formation of Cuban nationalism. But in my view, reflect Mulata images as critical to the formation, but in my view, reflect Mulata image as fixed and static. By rescuing the theatrical Mulata as central, I hope to refurbish this construction as a cultural apparatus that travel through Latin America embodied culture, incarnating our unspeakable sins and desires. La Mulata avatar resists translations through a persistent de-racialization. In the early inception, La Mulata reflects the moral panic of racial miscegenation in 19th century Cuba and update the ancient myths about the dangerous female. She was the effigy fabricated from human bodies and the associations they evoke, as Joseph Roche would say. As proof her hypervisibility in pamphlets of early Cuban anthropological society and costumbrista aesthetics. I just keep showing some images of things that I already mentioned about Mulata, Ochun, the renditions of La Caridad del Cobre in the parades, religious parades in Havana. As performed extensively by white actresses, the brown face and makeup signaled the intention, as Baba suggests, to produce a colonized as a script, a social reality which is at once an other and yet entirely noble and visible. In that script, La Mulata racial aspirations are routinely frustrated, and she often ends up right where she started, just as Ochenyongo argues in the analysis of the American minstrel. The Cuban minstrel was not only a vehicle to the dissemination of sex through moral panic, but also an advertisement of the colored women body as public entertainment. So I'm going to show this picture that is kind of very ahead of what I'm talking about, but it's actually very, very rare to see the white actress in brown face makeup that was like the regular way in that the mulata, the theatrical mulata, was shown in the 19th century Cuba. So when you look at, for the mulata, the theatrical mulata or teatro bufo mulata, you basically found images of Candida Quintana or Rita Montaner, but you rarely found like the white actress in brown face, right? So La Mulata was defined by a scenic discourse of sensuality and provocation. Her spectrum of possibilities was stressed by several surnames: La Mulata de Rumba, de Rumbo, or de Rango, the rumba dancer, the street walker, a pretender or snob, respectively. In La Mulata, the repertoire of sounds, gestures, and the presence of rumba was a quintessential signifier. La Mulata drew from racial exotic characters from the golden age of Spanish theater, their peculiar ruffled gowns. But at the turn of the century, the gown of the rumbera, the multi-layered dress with ruffled sleeves, was transnationally considered the Cuban national costume. The Cuban minstrel theater, or teatro bufo, became popular toward the mid of the 19th century. Contrasting with American minstrel tradition will be defined by the interaction of three characters: el gallego, el negrito, and la mulata. The Galicia, or the Spaniard, the little black man, and the mulatto woman. Black and brown face, like mulata and negrito, represent grammatical personas, a truth to become, through repetition, truer than truth. As cultural technique, those avatars have the mission of disempower systematically the voices and subjectivities, the demands of justice and civil rights of people of color. They replicate in the symbolic realm the exploitative economic of slavery. The body of color are projected as empty artifacts to be occupied, to be guided, ready to receive orders. On stage, those avatars voice speeches written for them, conveniently as speakers or as menace of the national project. Cuban mixed nationalistic claims forced the bufos to an early exile in 1869, but open a less known transnational history. And what happened in 1869, there is a lot of commentary about Teatro Villanueva, no? So I'm following here like a commentary, like a theoretical arch around La Mulata. But I just want to emphasize that Cuban Minstrel Theater debut was precisely in May of 1868. Just a few months before the starting of the Cuban Independence War, that was in October of 1868. And precisely in January of 1869, just a few months after, there was like the sucesos, what is called the sucesos of Teatro Villanueva, in that even Jose Marti, our national hero and intellectual, was present. And what happened is like those characters of the Cuban Minstrel Theater voice a sympathy for the independentist cause. And this was the reason why the Cuban Minstrel Theater, only 7 months after their inception of Cuban Minstrel Theater, with a considerable popularity, it was like a boom. We say 7 months, but in 7 months, From May to January, there was like 7 Cuban minstrel theater troops that developed and were touring all over the island. So it was like a real, it was something that became fashionable and likable for the Cuban population. So after the success of Teatro Villanueva, the artists of Cuban minstrel theater were banned to perform in Cuba. And so I keep reading, if my computer allows me to keep reading for you. Okay. So, but I know what it's saying here, what I was saying here. What I'm saying here is like this exile of the Cuban minstrel producers, the artists, the writers, the composers that developed this genre in Cuba was very fruitful for the genre, because they went to Puerto Rico and they went to Mexico fundamentally and refashioned their characters into the voices into the local voices, into the local problems. So in 1873, only 4 years after the Havana premiere was performed, Los Negros Catedráticos debut en Puerto Rico. And by 1879, Cuban buffo companies were regular in the Puerto Rican stage. By the end of the 19th century, Mexico was already a plaza fuerte for Cuban minstrel and theater, with several replicas of Negritos and Mulata performances. After the 1910 revolution, those avatars, and this is based on the work of the historian Gabriela Pulido Llano, the replicas of those characters became troops of modernity and cosmopolitanism in Mexico after the 1910 revolution. This process of cultural circulation has been defined by Cesar Salgado as anastomosis, in that discourses, populations, words, nightmares, utopias, gestures, movements, ornaments, and rhythms develop new structures of feelings. So I think also that there were like some of these plazas or circulations that were connected also to the US, to the Tampa and Key West Cuban population. And in every single case, there was a lot of the anti-imperialist discourse in Cuba or in Puerto Rico case, especially after the American intervention. So, but with the entrance of the technology, these technologies became an agent of dissemination for troops of Cuban minstrel theater like La Mulata and El Negrito. And I have to confess that my first entrance into this research was through the 1930s, a moment of inception of the cultural industries. And among the several cultural industries of the turn of the century, one that is less described and less observed is the dance industry. That have already fashioned since 1910 several dance crazes, recycling ethnic dances like tango, machiche from Brazil, among many other African American dances. But in the 1930s was the moment of Cuba. And that moment is known by cultural historians as the rumba craze. The rumba craze capitalized on those technological advances in recording, radio, and film, which radically transformed the access of arts to the masses. And by the grace of such advances, a myriad of musical and dance performances appeared. From the sales of a peanut vendor, the peanut vendor is actually what the debut of what we call the rumba craze is started with the peanut vendor success in the American market. The peanut vendor, do you know? Did somebody don't know the peanut vendor? Raise your hand. If you don't know, no, don't be.
No, better Spanish, el manicero.
El manicero. No, pero yo se lo canto. Manicero se va. Si te quieres por el pico divertir, cómprame un cucuruchito de maní. Pam, 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 pam. Pam, 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 pa, pam, pa, pam. ¿Ya te suena?
No, but it's okay, it's really nice.
Okay, well, in any case, this is one of the most famous songs over time in history, and it became like the first bestseller of Latin American music, selling in 1927 more than 1 million of copies, The Peanut Vendor. And in that time, the industry worked in a very different fashion than today. The industry sell like the sheets of music, no? So the musicians, the orchestras, they could do like their own version, create like their own lyrics. And I bet I haven't like heard a Chinese version of The Peanut Vendor, but I wouldn't be surprised, you know, that they have a Chinese version of El Manicero, because there are as many English versions about the lyrics as you can, I don't know, as people here in this room. But it's very famous, like the Marion, ¿cómo se llama? Marion Sunshine, I think it was the most famous performer in Broadway on that time, that worked also with Don Aspiazu Orchestra in New York. So it was a whole phenomenon about the peanut vendor. But also the rumba craze create a revolution in the ballroom industry in Europe and in the United States, and start a process of re-recording of the Cuban sonority, the creation of new Latino types like Carmen Miranda or Dolores del Rio, and the Mexican rumberas or the later Desi Arnaz. Different Cuban cultural expressions acquired currency at the time, like conga, son, and afros, but rumba was the genre that will see the most manipulation and popularity at once. All Cuban sonority was a bestseller under the rumba label. The Mulata rumbera avatar spread through Caribbean capitals and became a common diva act in Latin American cabarets. The rumbera attire was used as an identity marker of Latinidad in the commercial process of the rumba craze. Not surprisingly, when the 1927 song El Manicero by Moises Simons fueled this commercial interest in Cuban music, rumba was chosen as the label of Cubanness, detached from the specificity of national and local significations. And the mulata in flesh, the mulata brown face, became also memorialized, iconized, and transformed. And I am very interested not only in like this transformation and in this process of circulation, but also like the racial implications, that has how the mulata body became also a sort of a boot camp for white women to accept themselves as modern, desirable sex symbols using the mulata avatar repertoire. And I'm going to share now videos. What is my helper? Okay, too far, I told you. Okay, I am going to show some videos. A ver, ¿dónde está? ¿Aquí? Okay, la mulata rumbera. Okay. No, no.
América. West America.
I think I haven't like say the most important piece of information about these images that you are looking at. And the thing is, like, all these rumberas that we remember just as the rumberas, all of them were trained as mulatas of the Cuban theater before they went to the films, to the film industry to do the rumberas. So they trained themselves to be the divas. They fashion and they sell and they iconize for us being la mulata first. Okay. So. Some of them really well achieved, like in this case, you know, Sevilla, she really mastered Afro-Cuban dances, like rumba and oricha and all of that. Some people say that she was a practitioner of Santeria as well. Vamos a subir un poquito más. Sí. Look at that. Okay, but the thing is, like, these images has been so so imprinted as the fashionable and lovely and they're so iconic that it's very hard to see the ideological discourses, especially for us Cuban people, Latino people that have been exposed to these images like forever, no? And when I started researching about rumba, sí, busca el de los negros per se. And when I started researching about rumba, one of the most fascinating things is like when I ask people, hey, what do you know about rumba? And people, the first thing they say is rumberas. Okay, the first thing that people say to me is like, I remember the rumberas. I remember Anino Sevilla, and I remember Amalia Aguilar, and they were so beautiful, you know, and they are, oh my God, this is like my favorite film genre is La Rumbera, but what about the real rumba? So like, yeah. Well, I have no idea what is that, you know, what the rumba is what the rumberas dance, right? And suddenly this did not occur to anybody that this could be problematic at some point, no? But it's very interesting when you see at the same time frame, you know, how the Afro-Cuban bodies present themselves, what type of discourses they enact in the stage, in the screens, in the films. And the people that know some of my work knows that I am a big fan of René Estela, and my first research about dance and performance was about René Estela. And I always like to bring René Estela as the ambassadors of los sitios, because they were like people dancing in the way that Afro-Cuban people dance exactly on the same time in Cuban neighborhoods, in the Cuban poor neighborhoods. So, let's see René Estela. The main differences between the song performance of René and Estela is like Estela is totally dressed, no? And Estela is dancing, and Estela is not making a show of her body or how sexy she is. She's there to dance, and to dance with René. And the wow factors of this moment in the screen is to show us how they dance. Yes or no?
Yes.
To show us, oh, the dance is so elegant. The dance is a dance that is dignified. It's a dignified dance. It's not a dance as a spectacle of sexuality, right? So here, ¿cómo se llama?
Xiomara Alfaro.
Xiomara Alfaro, el ruiseñor.
She's still alive here in Miami.
Miami? I thought she lived in Atlanta. La mulata de la montaña.
Sevilla.
el mundo, everybody start and end completely dressed, no? So they go there, they go to the stage to show their talents, not to show their bodies, not to show their flesh. So you can see what I'm talking about. So, but to me also, as a, yeah, vamos a ir al último, el de la mulata salsera. One of the, no, este de aquí arriba. It's but the thing is like how, and that's why I talk about the avatars, you know, the avatars of La Mulata, because it's refashioning itself. It's always creating new ways of embodiments, finding new spaces in the cultural practices, no? And I like to follow like the Puerto Rican, because there is a connection, very strong connection in between the Puerto Rican culture and what we define today as the Latino culture in the US. No? I think they are like one of the most important channels, no, into the formation of Latinidad. No? So in this case we have La Rumbera, it is Chacón, that is in the 1950s, 1960s, like a few years, a few decades after the rumberas, in the ¿cómo se llama? The golden age of Mexican film, or the Mexican industry. But she refashioned again this notion of la mulata, the canela, the cinnamon body, you know, the cinnamon flesh that make everybody tramp around. So you see this guy face like right there in this. Okay, vamos a seguir. But this also, and this is like, as a dancer and as a dance teacher of Afro-Cuban dance, like, first time I started thinking about researching about dance was observing like how is the dance industry today, you know, and how it keep like retaking like all this archive of Cuban dance and reusing it, but it's using it in this form that you see like the model of this mulata, rumbera, avatar, blah blah blah. No, this conversation that started in the 19th century about the sexual body, no. How it's refashioning, how you can see it like right here in FIU at any moment, people dancing salsa with these costumes, and you're gonna say, oh my God, this is so fun, this is so pretty, you know. But there is this is part of the genealogy that my work is trying to put together. So let's go.
Por favor. Vamos a ver para que 3, 2, 1, music!
I'm always fascinated how the fact that the women are half naked and the men is always perfectly dressed, no? It's like, let's be naked, it's stage for everybody to see, right? At least 5 minutes to talk a little bit about the material I found in this, ciérrame aquí porque necesito ir a los audios ahora, in the Ayala collection. And I am so happy that I came here when Veronica was here to help me to find all the treasures, to uncover all the treasures of the Ayala collection. And more interesting, vamos a ir a otra presentación. Ok. Sí, sí, sí. No, sí, no. Sí, ya creo que yo esto lo puedo manejar ya. Entonces, so one of the findings in the Ayala collection is that there was a considerable amount of dialogues of Cuban minstrel theater from the beginning of the 19th century, the 20th century, right here, recorded in the Ayala collection. And this is very surprising because I show you some of the film industry examples, but I have no idea of the presence of pure Cuban minstrel theater right there, recorded, printed in records. No, I think that the earlier recording I have found is in the 1906. And there is, for me, many questions that now is open, because it's like how was the circulation of those records, and why the American industry, because all this was done by sort of explorers, you know, sort of missionary recorders that went with small equipments, no, and did the records right there. Sometimes in the theater, sometimes along with the artists. Sometimes they do like a record per recording, because they did not have sometimes ways to reproduce. So this recording was like done for us, for the original artist, and to